Hello everybody, welcome back. It is me, Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, right here. And it is Tech Tuesday. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to go over, and we're going to be back in Windows Commando VM. Now, if you didn't catch last week's episode, go ahead and pause this or, stop it. Go back to last week's Tech Tuesday and watch that one where I explain what Windows Commando VM and what it brings to the table. So that today, what I can cover for you guys is installing Kali Linux, or WSL Kali Linux, as it's known, in this VM. Now, you don't install it the normal way by going to Windows App Store or going online. We're going to do it the way of Commando. And it is a little bit of a process. It takes a little bit of time, but it is well worth it. And the reason for that is sometimes, like I stated last week, if you are on a completely Windows domain and you want the benefits of all the AD tools and all the Windows features that you can get and all the ability to pivot and migrate and do everything within a Windows domain from a Windows box offensively, while at the same time still have access to all of your Linux tools that you normally get in Kali, it's very much possible. So this actually gives you the best of both worlds. Now, this is coming from someone who does most of their pen testing and most of their offensive work via Linux, whether it be Ubuntu with all my tools installed, Arch Linux, Parrotsec, Kali, list goes on. I've used a slew of different Linux operating systems over the years. But at the end of the day, this is something that is a viable solution for people. And again, the main selling point on it for me anyways, and why I started investigating it and researching it and why I would use it, is because we still are tied into a lot of Windows-only domains. So even though you can integrate or, find out information from Active Directory and things like that, with Linux, don't get me wrong, I've used LDAP search. I've used a lot of Linux-based tools to interrogate and enumerate Windows domains. Having Windows and having offensive tools on Windows just makes things easier. So if you're not using it as a daily driver, rather as an offensive security virtual machine, or even putting it on, a box that you draw, a virtual machine that you drop into their network when you're doing an internal pen test, then it still is a viable solution. And it has a lot of the things that you're going to need. So, saying that, why don't we get into it and take a look at Commando VM and installing WSL Kali Linux. Now, in order to do this, it's actually a multi-step process, and it's because of the way it does things. Now, you can do things in advance, like install WSL, or enable it rather, and then go through and install everything. But there's some installer and scripts within the FireEye VM, Commando VM, that I just want it to run. I want to make sure it does everything its own way. Again, you don't have to do it this way. If you know how to enable WSL, you are more than welcome to do it that way, and play with any of the glitches that come along. But being that I've tested this, I know it works. This is the route we're going to go. So, without further ado, let me make this bigger for you guys. So, properties. And medium. Oh, that's just the cursor size. That ain't what I want. Property, font. Let's go 28. 28 should work. There we go. Nice and big. All right, so now you guys can see it. So, in order to install anything in Commando VM, it's using Chocolatey. All right, if you don't know what it is, go ahead, take a look, research a little bit. It's an awesome way to install things and keep your system, your applications updated. So, kind of like how on Mac OS X people use Homebrew, Linux, even though Ubuntu has Snap now, while a lot of Linux distributions use Snap, or something like that, there's still dpackage and apt that keep your system updated there and allow you to install things. So aptitude, dpackage, Pacman, the list goes on. Depending on your flavor and distribution, there's different ways to get things installed and get them updated. With Chocolatey, it's easy. C, so Chocolatey, INST, -Y, because we're going to say yes. All right, we want to just go past all the prompts and tell it, yes, go ahead and install, whatever the case may be. And we're going to say Kali.FireEye. And the reason for this is because when it's looking, just like when you're installing into anything in a Linux, it's looking in a repository. This is doing the same thing. All right, it's going to look into the packages that Commando has and install via their scripts and whatever they want to enable. So doing it this way, I have noticed it is an older version of WSL Kali. However, you're still going to get a lot of the same features. Plus, once you're in it, you can update it and upgrade it to whatever you want anyway. So it's not a big deal. And for this, we're going to set a timeout, even though for this process, it doesn't necessarily matter because it's not going to fully update anyways. We're going to have to do a restart, but I'll show you this. So we're going to do this, and we're going to hit enter. Now, as it's going through, as you can see, it's going to go to Chocolatey. Yes, we accept the licenses, terms, conditions, blah, blah, blah. We all know what is, the norm. So, it's going to download it from the repository. As you can see, 2018, March 27th. It's an older version. But like I said, again, we can always update it. All right, so that's not a big deal. The version that it gets you is not a huge deal. And the nice thing about it is sometimes you want the older version. Sometimes there's little quirks in the newer ones that you just don't want. Not always, but sometimes. So it's always a benefit to have multiple operating systems. So let's say you do have a Kali version that's fully updated. Or let's say you're running, you can even enable Docker and use Kali Docker and have a distribution on there. So there's so many different ways you can do this. This is just one of the ways that I want to show you how to get things done. And if you have anything that you want to see, again, I don't necessarily have a fully enabled lab environment set up right now. I'm just going through how to show you. I'm just showing you how to set up and utilize certain tools. So if there's anything you do want to see that you think will be a huge benefit, go ahead, put it in the comments down below. So while this is downloading, yeah, I'm using this operating system for some other courses, or I was going to use it for some other courses, but I've never used OpenVPN in Windows. I've only ever used it in Linux. So my scripts that I designed aren't for Windows. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to use this for the purpose I wanted. But I digress. Everything's downloading. It's all there. So now it's going to install it all. But there's a few things you're going to see. So the first one is you see how it says enabling Microsoft Windows Subsystem for Linux. And that's because it is actually a Windows feature. All right, so it's not actually software. It just enables Windows Subsystem for Linux in its version 1. If you want version 2, it's a whole nother video that I'd have to go through and show you how to set up and create. And as you can see, there is a message right here. Error, host must be rebooted before continuing install of WSL FireEye. And that is the problem I have seen a lot every time I do this. Now, unfortunately, when you install Kali.FireEye in this way and in this fashion, you are going to get these errors. It's actually not going to complete the install. So once it's done, we actually have to reboot the system and run the installer again. Now, I'm sure you can go through and just do WSL.FireEye. I just so happen to not remember how they named all their scripts to do it. So I find just going through, I haven't had a failure yet doing it this way, which is why I wanted to take it through it's why I wanted to take everybody through installing it in this manner, seeing that without WSL installed properly, it's going to go through, it's installing VCX server, and then, previous to that, it enabled WSL. The install enabled WSL. And again, it failed. You can see error, host must be rebooted. Well, didn't fail per se, but not everything's going to install correctly. So when it's all said and done, once this is done, we're going to have to go through reboot and run this installer again with the force command, because as it goes through, it's going to recognize that, oh, it's already installed. So if you don't do it with a force command, it is going to end up not installing. With force and with the same timeout and everything, it'll actually go through and install and do everything it needs to do. So in the future, if you want to take it upon yourself to run the CINST -y WSL.FireEye and then Kali.FireEye, you're more than welcome. I'm not telling you not to do it. This is just that particular script or enabling or whatever you want to call it, that particular package is not listed, or at least at the time I looked, in their CSV file of available packages. So off the top of my head, I couldn't remember what they called it. So this is where we're at. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I am actually going to let this install VCX server. So I'm going to pause this video, and I will see you guys in a second. All right, so we're back. And as you can see, I am actually a little bit further. It got hung up on that VCX server. I actually had to hit enter for it to get past it. So we're past it. So if you see it hang for a few minutes, it didn't happen last time I tried this. So it's kind of interesting that it did it this time, but that's okay. So it did get past it, and now it's actually downloading WSL Kali Linux, which with any luck won't take incredibly long. But as you can see by my internet connection, which is incredibly slow, it does look to be taking a while. So I just wanted to show you this. And what I'm going to do is we're going to fast forward. And when I see you here in a few seconds, it'll be done. And we'll continue along. So I'll see you in a minute. Woohoo! And as you can see, we have some failures. So it finished downloading. I know that was quick, right? It was only like a second. No, but in reality, we had a failure here for the checksum because it didn't download fully. So we are going to have to download this again, which is fine because, you know, we had WSL issues anyways. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you some things. We're going to get learnt today. So we restart because we need to have it enable WSL anyway. So that's why you're going to see working on updates, blah, 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 all that fun stuff that Windows does whenever you enable new features and do different updates and things of that nature. So, yes, I know I'm using VMware. I'm not using VBox. Woo! So let's go through. And hopefully I don't see that checksum error again when I go through it this time. Unfortunately, with how slow my internet is, sometimes it happens. Not a whole lot I can do about it because it doesn't actually finish the download. So with this reboot, I'm going to show you how we do a -- force. Although it really shouldn't be necessary this time because of the fact that it didn't actually install. But we're going to do it anyways because why not just force it through? All right. And after that, it'll go through. And just to kind of give you a heads up on how this process goes, the way FireEye set up their script and the way they do things is as soon as it installs Kali and actually starts going through and doing things, it does run an update and upgrade. So you'll see all that. You'll see what it runs. You'll see what it installs. But just so you know, it's not, even though it's 2018, that's why the install can sometimes take a while and why you put that timeout there. Because if you don't, it'll attempt to go through and assume that it's installed right away, and then the install will fail again. So we put the timeout there so that it gives it time to actually update and upgrade everything and do things that Linux and other operating systems do. So without further ado, let's log back in. Yeah, I know. Just a crazy email address I created just for fun. For this machine and this machine only. It allows me to kind of carry some things over. Kind of crazy, right? So, what we're going to do, we're going to go here. We're going to open this back up. Hex launch. We're going to do this one more time. This time, everything will work. I promise. CINST-Y. Kali. Fire. I. Force. Timeout. And if you go online to their website and look at how others have installed this, they say do a timeout of 7,200 seconds. The last time I did that, because of how many updates there were, it still failed. So I still ran into the same problem. So this way, I haven't had an issue yet. Now, as tends to be the case when I do videos like this, I, for some reason, have issues. But as you can see here, it says Kali is already installed, which we saw the hashes didn't match. It did not actually fully install. So we're forcing a reinstall so that it'll go through and actually run all the steps that it has to run. And how you know Kali is actually fully installed is down here in the taskbar, you'll see a Kali icon and you'll see things change. So, look at that. It says error hashes do not match. And that was our problem last time. It didn't actually finish the download, so the hashes do not match. So, once again, we're going to go through. We're going to pause this. Well, you're not going to know, but I'm going to pause it. And when I come back, that'll be downloaded. See you in a second. All right, check that out. Look at that. We're at 97%. It was real quick, wasn't it? It's like, whoosh. We're already there. All right. So, as this is almost done, and again, a really slow internet that you wouldn't know it, but it has been quite a bit just to download 170 megs. So for all of you out there that have extremely fast internet, good on you. I do not. So this is what I have. It's been probably 15 minutes since I started this download. So that just goes to show. Sometimes living out in the country doesn't always work. But as we go through, we see, oh, look at that. Look at that. Hashes match. And that's the one beautiful thing about this is as it's downloading, it actually compares hashes for what it has versus what you've downloaded. So it does a lot of that for you already. And it's doing it all the way through. So everything that it is unzipping, everything that it's doing, it compares those hashes anytime there's a new application that it has to launch. So, again, I love Commando. I think it is awesome. It has its uses. It has its value. So don't ever think that you have to be just tied into Linux. I get it. You may want to use Linux as a daily driver. I'm not against that. I love Linux as a daily driver. But sometimes on pen tests or, blue team efforts, whatever the case may be, Windows is just necessary. Now, if that's the case, there's a lot of Windows variations out there. Some prevented by, or some brought to you by Sans, some brought to you by FireEye that work great. And you get all these tools and you get things that allow you to do your job. For instance, FireEye also has, I believe I talked about it before, FireEye Flare, which is a reverse engineering malware distribution that they offer. So that's amazing as well. I just hit enter and we've got installation successful. Now, see all these error computing hashes? That is because the file is locked. It's built into Kali Linux, so it can't actually get the hash of all of the Kali Linux file structure. That's fine. It's not going to cause any errors. It's not going to cause any issues. You already know that the Linux distro you downloaded is good. So it's going to go through. It's going to do the shimgen. What do you know? And as you can see here, we've got the update, fix missing, the app-get-y upgrade, and then it's going to exit. Now, again, slow internet. So let me go through and finish my last train of thought before we get into this. So yeah, FireEye, Flare, I've used it. It does. It has Ghidra, has a bunch of other stuff. So maybe I'll do another video with that eventually, just showing you around Flare. You install it the same way. So I'll probably do a blog post here shortly about installing that as well. If you haven't checked out my blog post for Commando, it is on cyberwarriorstudios.com under blogs, or you can go to blogs.cyberwarriorstudios.com. I gotta look. I'll put the link down there. Don't worry, it'll be there. Actually, it's in my last video too, but cyberwarriorstudios.com for sure. There's a link on the side for my blog post, and you can go there and see exactly how to install Windows Commando. And it will be the same process of Flare, as well as they have a new Threat Hunter virtual machine out as well. So all these cool things FireEye is putting out for Windows, which is great because there's certain executables, certain malware, certain whatever that just requires Windows. You can only do so much with Linux when it comes to dealing with the Windows environment. And yes, we've made strides. There's so much you can do with Linux to integrate with Windows, but to this day, there are still some things that just work better when you're running Windows and you're investigating Windows environments, you're pen testing a Windows environment. But again, this is one of those features, Kali Linux, WSL Kali, that allows you to have the best of both worlds. You get a lot of Kali tools, actually all the Kali tools. The problem comes in where you have to configure some of the ports and the way it interacts with the operating system in a different way. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on that, just because that gets more in depth and requires a lot more time. But if you want to play around with it, there are a lot of things you can do from this. I think the only thing you're really limited on is running things like Nmap gets tricky, but Nmap is on Windows Commando. You can still run things like Netcat and things of that nature. But again, even those tools are on Commando. So if you're trying to figure out how to do things, again, there you have WSL Kali Linux. If you haven't played with it before, you can play with it here. If you have played with it before, now you know how to install it on here. But I would just make sure that when you do things, you do them in such a way that you're cognizant that this is not Linux in and of itself. You're not running a Linux operating system, as I'm sure you know. So there are going to be quirks, there are going to be changes, there are going to be things you need to do to make it work in the manner in which you're expecting. And as you can see here, it's saying I have a lot of time till this is done. So, saying that, once again, you're going to see a big time lapse here and not notice it, but that's okay. So, I'll catch you guys here in a little bit once all these installs and updates are done. So I'm back. As you can see, we got about a few seconds left before this is done. So what I'm noticing as it's going through, this is actually the first time I actually looked at everything it's installing. Now understand that when you install the Windows Commando version of Kali Linux, the package that it installs is actually running scripts, and it forces it to install other stuff. All right. Well, as you can see, XFCE. There were some Python imports that it put in, and Python installs, Ruby, among a slew of other things. So because of that, that's why for me it's quite a while. I think I've been sitting here for about 45 minutes or so, waiting for this to get done for you guys. But ultimately, if you have a fast internet, this will be a heck of a lot quicker. I do not. Now, this does allow for Metasploit. This installed Burp Suite. It installed a lot of things. So it's going to have all of that built in, just as if you would have installed WSL Kali in another form. The big kicker for this, and one of the reasons you do it this way, is you don't want to use anything that tracks you, or limit any tracking as much as possible. So things like Windows App Store and stuff like that, you try to avoid. So this is one of those ways where, yeah, it's calling out. You're talking to FireEye, you're talking to GitHub, and a few other things, but you're not actively using a valid account on like App Store or anything like that. So, I mean, you could potentially use a local account, a local admin account, as opposed to what I've done, which is creating an Outlook email just so I can migrate things from system to system. But as you can see here, it's unpacking and installing everything. There was about almost 2,000 packages that it actually downloaded and installed, or is installing and unpacking. So it's going to be another little bit. I did want to touch base with you guys prior to it getting through all this, just because I wanted to show you that the download did finish. And as normal with any Linux install or Linux software install, it's going through and doing all of this. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let this finish, and I'll catch you guys in a second. All right, so this is just about done unpacking. One of the things I just saw that I wanted to let you guys know is one of the beauties of this script is it actually does install Tmux. So for those who like to do or utilize Tmux as their main terminal, you can do that. So again, this is Kali Linux in WSL, or WSL Kali Linux, and it's still installing quite a few more things. Hopefully it doesn't have too much further to go as it's getting through Python 3, Powersploit, a bunch of stuff. So understand that, again, this isn't, how do I put this? This is not Kali as if you installed it on a hard drive or a virtual machine. So there are going to be quirks. There are going to be things that are installed here that just aren't going to work. It happens because it's emulating certain aspects and can't talk to all the ports, can't really integrate or interact with sockets, as you would expect. Now, things like SQL Map and being able to talk to the internet, all that'll work fine. It's very valid. But I seen that this installed Firefox ESR into Kali, which I don't know why you have Firefox on your computer. You have Burp Suite already here in Commando. So there are things that it installs that aren't necessary. But again, if you have a fast internet connection, if you're giving it enough hardware, it's not going to be a huge deal. You're going to take up some space, but depending on how you've set up your virtual machine for Windows Commando, it's not really going to be the end of the world or really slow you down all that much. Now, Wireshark's here, and again, it's installing a lot of repetitive tools, but for those that love Linux and want to use the tools rather in here versus in Windows, more power to you, man. They're all there, and it's giving you the ability to do a lot of things with both operating systems, so with Windows and with Linux. Dirbuster, that's a huge one for me. I use Dirbuster, Dirsearch, and GoBuster. I find reasons to use all of them, although my primary are Dirb and GoBuster. Those are the primary ones that I use within Linux. So again, it's on you. It's how you want to approach things. It's how you feel comfortable. This is just more tools to your arsenal. All right. Us as security professionals, we like to kind of get stuck in our ways and be like, oh, we've always done it this way. But while at the same time, there's others like myself that like to think outside the box and realize that sometimes we can use something else or do something different to make it better or to just make it more efficient for us as a person. And in the same token, you're going to have people that are going to be like, well, why use Kali? Why use Windows Commando? You can download your own, have your own virtual machines, use Ubuntu, use Arch Linux, use whatever you want, and just install the tools you need. Some of us don't have that kind of time. All right. We don't have the luxury of being able to just be like, oh, I'm going to do Arch Linux and install what I need on the fly, or install what I need and keep it with me, but then I got to update it and do everything else. Look, I keep multiple operating systems. Windows Commando, Windows Flare, Windows Threat Pursuit, actually, is what the new one's called for Windows. Those are the FireEye ones. Then I have Kali Linux, ParrotSec, Ubuntu. I don't think I have an Arch Linux virtual machine anymore. But realize that you can have multiple operating systems. All right. So if anybody tells you any differently, for using things like Kali, like ParrotSec, like BlackArch, if you want to use BlackArch instead of, I think it's BlackArch, instead of Arch Linux, right? So it's the offensive security distribution for Arch Linux. If you want to use that, go ahead. Don't be afraid to. If you're not an exploit developer, if you don't really develop your own scripts just yet, or you're just breaking in to the field or to pen testing or even blue teams, because blue teamers have to understand how to do offensive security as well, at least at a high level, and kind of what different attacks will show in the logs. Then do it. All right. So again, I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna let this finish up, and as soon as it's done, we'll be right back. All right. So as we're coming near the end, it's setting everything up. It's already unpacked everything, and going through this setup now. This doesn't take long. So as it's going through this, what I'm going to do when it's done is I'm going to restart one more time, just so we're sure that everything, and as it is with Windows, and again, one of the nuances with Windows, as we all know, is you have to restart. There's no guarantee I have to restart here. I just tend to do it anytime I do major installs, especially something like this. And once that's done, we'll log in, and I'll just show you how you can spawn Kali Linux, WSL Kali Linux, within Windows Commando. And again, this isn't the end all be all. There's different operating systems, different ways so many different ways you can skin a cat, as they say. And if you want to add this tool to your arsenal, go for it. If not, then don't. But it's just one more way that you can do pen testing and red teaming and things of that nature. Understand this. I do know of blue teams out there that when their companies do a pen test, they immediately start looking for people who are calling out to Kali Linux. So if you're going to do something like this and try to set it up while you're on site, please don't. Please have all your configurations, all your updates, all your upgrades, and everything done beforehand. And that's especially if you're using Kali Linux as your main OS dropping on site. They are looking for those callouts. They are looking for people that are going to reach out and be like, oh, I need to update my operating system because they patched something. Man, pull it offline, update it from a USB drive or from a hotspot or something like that doesn't belong to their network, because now they're going to catch everything. And it isn't all companies, but I do know of people that do that, right? So it kind of ruins the effect, especially if you're supposed to be a red team and try to be silent. Definitely don't want to do something like this on a network when you're trying to be silent. But as a pen tester, they start watching you a lot more and a lot more closely. I find that the best way to do pen testing, the best way to do anything, even if you're not in a true purple team aspect where you're integrating with the blue teams on a regular basis, is to operate under the pretense that, yes, you're going to be noisy. You want to limit it, but you're still at times going to be noisy. But you don't want to do something that or you don't want to be watched constantly if you can avoid it. If you can be quiet, if you can do things in such a way that, how do I put it? If you could do things in such a way that you're not going to be seen, or you're hiding your traffic, then do it. And the reason for that is it makes blue teams better. All right. And that's ultimately us as security professionals, especially us as, or anybody that does pen testing. That's your goal, is not only to find the holes, find the flaws and the vulnerabilities and the ways to get in, but you're also enabling those blue teams to do better and to find you in different ways. If they're not aware that you're there, you don't want to let them know you're there by being extremely loud on the internal network. So let's be cognizant of that and make sure, if we're going to set something like this up, if you're going to have a Kali Linux distribution or a ParrotSec or whatever the case may be, make sure you have it all updated and everything prior to giving it to the company, or prior to showing up on site, because you don't want to connect to their network and immediately blast out that you're talking to these Linux sites that normally they don't see this traffic. So again, that's just something to be aware of and take into account whenever you're doing your pen testing. Now, this is building the man pages of the, 2,000 or 1,900 and some applications and changes. So it could take a little bit. When it's done, this is the end. I mean, anybody who's done a Linux update or upgrade or installed anything with Linux that has to deal with man pages would have seen something like this already. So, hey, that part's done. Now we're going to finish setting up some more. So we've got our symlinks, we've got everything else. It's going through creating all the config files. Didn't find one of my directories. But again, this isn't Linux. This isn't Kali installed on a hard drive. This isn't Kali installed on a USB drive. This is legitimately just WSL Linux. So you're going to have issues. You're going to have syntax errors. And some of these syntax errors are just because the scripts haven't been updated for Python 3, or any of the new updates to some of the languages. And as soon as we're done, one of the things I will check for you guys is whether or not Python 2 is even here. If it is, great, because having both Python versions, especially for some of the tools that get installed, having both Python versions is huge, because some of them don't work with Python 3, and some of them don't work with Python 2. It's just the way they're written. It's one of the downsides to the way Python updated their language, is it doesn't have it has some compatibility issues, and it's one of the things I'm going over in the class I'm doing. So we're gonna go through that, and as soon as this is done setting everything up, we will be just about done, because I'll show you the finalization, what Commando shows you when it's done, and we'll restart, and I will pull up Kali. You'll get to see how it looks, and we will do a check for Python 2 and Python 3. Well, I know Python 3 is there, but we'll do a check for Python 2, and then we'll be done. So again, I hope you guys are enjoying this video. I hope you're getting something out of it. And I know this is a little bit longer than the other videos I have done. Heck, it's taken me a lot longer to create this one than I would have hoped. But when you have slow internet, you deal with what you do. So again, I really hope you guys are getting something out of this. I hope that, this is something that you choose to at least investigate, research, and possibly use on your own. And give Windows Commando a shot. I'm not big on Windows, but I have found its uses beyond gaming. Like I said, I don't game anymore, but it still has some purposes that it can serve. And having WSL Kali Linux just gives it that boost of a pen testing platform, because there is so much there, so much that you can do with it, that enables you to truly be a pen tester, especially on a Windows domain. So again, forgive the length of this video if you don't mind. I don't normally create videos this long, with the exception of Security Happy Hour. So if you've skipped through, if you've kind of looked at different things, good on you. I don't want to pause anymore, just because when this is done, I want you to see exactly what happens. So I don't want to miss that for you guys. So saying that, this should be just about done. Actually, you know what? I am going to pause one more time because I do know when to turn it back on. So I'm going to pause here, and I see you guys in a few seconds. All right, so we're back, and we have a few errors here. So being that it didn't exit like it normally would, if I run up and hit this, see what happens, because it should actually do that. There we go. So it fixed everything and it exited, and we can see the new Kali Linux logo apply, or is down here. But like I said, just for the ability to restart Windows, because we know how Windows can be, what I'm going to do, and you can see the log, it always puts a log at how things install down there. So we're going to close out of this, and we're going to restart. And as soon as we restart, we'll log in, and I will show you Kali Linux. All right, so we've restarted. And now, like I said, as you can see down here on the taskbar, we have the Kali Linux icon. So if we click that, we have Z Shell and we have Kali Linux rolling. So, and we're logged in as root. So if I go here, I can type, who am I? And I'm root. Which normally on the new Kali Linux, you don't log in as root. You log in as a standard user, which is known as Kali. So if I do one more thing just to show you, oh yeah, Python version. Like I said, we were going to check. And Python 2 is here. But like I said, there are certain scripts that require different versions. So be cognizant when you're running scripts within Python or within Kali, or any distribution for that matter, whether it's Windows or not, you're using the right Python version for it. So in order to do anything else, you would do Python 3 and version. And we have 3.8.6 for Python 3. I have other videos that show you how to do aliases, so you can set Python 3 as your default. You can set Python 2 as your default, which it already is. We already have Z Shell as our default shell. So echo $shell. Actually, bin bash. Oh, they changed it. ZSH. Z Shell was installed. They just changed the way this looks. So echo shell. Echo. So we're in Z Shell. For some reason, it's not printing out that that's where we are. Echo $0. There we go. Echo $0. We're in ZSH. So default shell for some reason is bash, but we're in ZSH now. And if I do exit, we're back to bash. So echo $0 bash and exit. And there you have it. So I hope you found this video helpful. I really do. I truly, truly do. And if you would like to see more, go ahead, hit subscribe, hit that like, hit that little alarm bell so that you're notified anytime I post a new video, or go live with things like Security Happy Hour. All the links that support me are down below, to include GoFundMe, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, merchandise.